Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. It's another post-match analysis video. So click off this video if you do not want to hear spoilers and post-match analysis for Yannick Sinner versus Casper Ruud in the semi-final stage of the ATP finals. And you know what? Before we get into it, hit that like button, subscribe if you're new, leave a comment as well. Let me know your thoughts on the match, and also leave a rating and review if you're listening on a podcast platform. Also, if you are a member on YouTube, thank you for being one because you guys are legends. Honestly, it helps a lot, so appreciate it. Okay, so let's get into it then. So Sinner, absolutely demolishes Casper Ruud 6-1, 6-2 in impressive fashion. Yannick was machine-like in this performance, in all honesty, and I every time I watch him now, the more I watch him, I just think, yeah, he's just more and more like a machine. The errors are being cut down continually. He's not making many mistakes. He is able to stick with people physically, toe to toe, and it just seems like he has everything. He's now adding things to his game: the drop shot, the lob, the net game, and it's becoming increasingly harder if you're anyone else on tour to really match him at the moment. And that's really the reality, I think, especially on hardcore. On hardcore, he's a big favorite for every tournament right now, and he will be for the Australian Open, even if he is to lose the final against Taylor Fritz, which, of course, is a rematch of the US Open final where Yannick won in straight sets, and then also a rematch of the group stage match they had, which again Yannick won in straight sets, and both matches very competitive, but Taylor hasn't been able to take a set off him this year. But we're going to focus on this match, and it might be a short video because there's not a whole lot to dive into, if I'm being honest, because it was such a quick match, and Sinner was just very, very polished in his performance. But there's a few things we can talk about. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide it by sets and then maybe talk about it as a whole. So let's talk about set one. So set one for me was really the start of the end for Ruud. So Sinner ended up breaking Ruud in his first service game. Sinner held to 15. Then for Casper Ruud, he was making his first serves. His first serve percentage was up at 69%, which is good, like really good. But he only won 33% of his first serve points. And that to me is a pretty shocking stat. And there's some reasons for it, and we'll dive into that in a second. But Sinner went into a 3-0 lead after breaking Casper, and he had just a single break. So you're thinking, okay, right, if Ruud can hold it, Ruud ends up holding, and then he gets two breakpoint opportunities on Yannick's serve. A couple of bad errors from Yannick that you wouldn't normally expect, and also Ruud pressing really well with the forehand, using his using that weapon to his advantage, and I think latching on to some shorter, maybe more passive balls from Sinner that maybe we're not as used to seeing, especially on his service games as well. And Casper got himself into a really good position, couldn't convert the two break points, and as I tend to say in every single video I talk about when it comes to Sinner, he is the best player at saving breakpoints on tour, and that's statistically proven. In 2024, he had the highest percentage of breakpoints saved out of anyone else on tour. And he proved it yet again in that first set. Casper breaks, it goes 3-2, it's on serve, and Casper has the opportunity to level things up. Instead, Sinner goes 4-1 up and then breaks Ruud to go 5-1 up and then take the set 6-1. So it really unraveled for Casper Ruud as soon as he didn't take those break points. There was a domino effect. Sinner took over. Momentum was clearly with him, and he ran with it and breadsticks Ruud. Now, in that first set, I want to talk about Casper Ruud's serve placement. That's the main thing I want to focus on. It was not great, in honesty. So Casper hit 75% of his first serves out wide on the juice side, so into the Sinner forehand, and those would have been slice serves. And similarly, he hit 60% into the Sinner forehand from the ad side. Again, those would have been slice serves. He hit 20% out wide from the ad side to the backhand and 20% to the body. And then from the juice side, none to the body and 25% down the tee. Now, he lost 4 out of 6 points when he served out wide on his first serve. So that's 75% of points. That's only 25% of points won on his first serve. It wasn't effective, that slice serve, and that tends to be his go to serve when he is struggling, when he feels like he's not quite, in rhythm and maybe wants to find some rhythm. And yeah, I mean, I just think for him, it's a little bit disappointing, I think, in all honesty. I wasn't very impressed with Ruud in that first set, despite him making on the first serves. And what was funny is that actually, when we now look at set two, he dipped in terms of first serves made. He went from 69% to 50%. And you're thinking, well, that's not good, right, Fazan? That's not good. Well, hold on a second. Would you rather hit 69% of first serves in and only win 33% of your first serve points? Or would you prefer to hit 50% of first serves in, so a dip in first serves made, but win 85% of your first serve points? Now, I personally would rather hit 50% of first serves and win 85% of those points. He won 11 out of 13 points on first serve in the second set. And statistically, you'd win more points doing what Ruud did in the second set. That's why he won an extra game, and that's why also he was having more success winning some of his service games easier, any of those two that he did win in the end. And for me, it was really important that Ruud was a bit more adventurous in the second set. And he was, in fairness to him. So if we look at his first serve in the second set, he actually hit 71% of serves out wide into the backhand for Sinner from the ad side and 67% down the tee from the juice side again into the Sinner backhand. So going primarily into the backhand, just 29% down the tee from the ad side. So that is into the Sinner forehand and 33% into the Sinner forehand from the juice side. And in fact, that one serve he hit out wide from the juice court was an ace, and mainly because he was primarily going into the backhand of Sinner, mixed it up, and then he ended up getting the ace because of that with that slice serve that he clearly likes hitting, and it seems to be something that he's very he's just generally, for me, pretty good at hitting. I would say. Um, so yeah, look, I mean, for me, Ruud was much better in that second set. I was impressed with the way that he adapted on his serve, and also what was really impressive from the second set for me was I thought he was a lot more adventurous as well with a +1 shot. Not just the serve placement and going for it more, but the fact that he was clearly going for more on the forehand, especially with that +1 shot. And he was managing to push Yannick and actually rush him and be the aggressor in quite a few of the points. Now, the issue for Ruud, not just in set two, but both sets as a whole, was that, well, there's a few things, and I think let's maybe focus on this and then potentially wrap up this analysis. So the first thing is, when it came to the points, he had to be the one dictating, and he had to be the one on the front foot pretty much throughout the whole point to have a chance of winning it. Because as soon as the points started to seesaw, Sinner eventually took over or enforced an error from Ruud, or Ruud went for too much. It just wasn't working out for Ruud in those rallies, and that's just the way it is, unfortunately. I mean, we can talk about like 9+ shots in the match rallies, and 8 points for Sinner, 5 for Ruud. we look at 5 to 8 shots, 15 points for Sinner, 9 for Ruud. And then if we look at 0 to 4 points, 31 points for Sinner, 15 for Ruud. So, I mean, Sinner is in front in all those categories. But what I think is very important to me is the fact that if we look at Casper Ruud's serve, now this is what's very interesting. If we look at Casper Ruud's serve, when the rallies went 9+ shots, Sinner won 6 points and Ruud is 0. And that's because Ruud is probably scared of missing as the point goes on. Sinner obviously can be more aggressive as the returner. But what that also tells me is that Sinner, of course, is more solid from the baseline and he's more accurate and his shot tolerance is better than Ruud's. The second point I want to make is the ad court battle. And, I talk about this a lot in quite a few different videos as preview or post match analysis because I feel like it's a really key part of the majority of top matchups on tour, especially for the men. And, serve and return dynamics, I think, is the most important thing, but this is arguably second. If we put aside the mental aspect of tennis and we just focus on the strategic type or strategic factors, even in a match. And the ad court battle in this case was clearly in favor of Sinner before the match even started. He has a much better two-handed backhand, and his defense out of that backhand corner is again extremely good in comparison to Ruud. His backhand is versatile. He can flatten, he can hit with spin, he can find good angles, he can go line very easily, and he can generate power with barely any backswing. It's a very natural and extremely well timed shot. Now, for Ruud, it's very different. It's more spinny. It can be quite floaty at times. It's not necessarily particularly natural. It doesn't get through the court like Sinner's does. And he doesn't defend that backhand corner anywhere near as good as Sinner. Despite Ruud improving his backhand substantially, may I say, in the last year and a half, 2 years, it still, when he comes up against elite players like a Sinner, against, I mean, he beat Alcaraz, of course, but generally against Alcaraz, I would say, Djokovic, of course. And also when he comes up against players like an Alexander Zverev as well, I think it's clearly an issue because, he gets bullied in the backhand to backhand exchanges. And not just that, but it's just the ad court battle as a whole because Sinner's got a great into-out forehand. To be fair, so does Ruud. But the issue is in that exchange is that Sinner's good enough to be able to hit the angles or hit with enough depth to really rush Ruud and force him to hit a backhand and not give him enough time to use that really impressive footwork that Ruud does have to then run around that backhand and utilize the forehand and find that forehand to hit into in or into out forehand. It wasn't happening a lot a lot during the match, and mainly because Sinner was just able to pin him down in that exchange. And then what Sinner would do, of course, is he would go line with the backhand and hurt Ruud when he'd come to the net. Would go drop shot at times as well. So for me, that was quite impressive from Yannick. And, I think the biggest thing for me is that Yannick in that ad court battle, he was patient. He didn't pull the trigger too early for the most part. And that is something that has really improved in his game. We talk about his serve, and his serve, of course, has improved and come on leaps and bounds in the last 2 years. And it's the most important shot in tennis. And for him, it's been a massive plus to his game and it's helped in a lot of different instances, of course. And that's the reason why he's won 2 Grand Slams is that he's really added to his game. He's improved substantially in a positive way. And, for Ruud, the issue that he has is that Sinner, the reason why he's got better shot tolerance is because he has the patience to stick with someone like Ruud in that exchange until he deems it the right opportunity to come forward and the risk and reward is worth it. I think in the past he would get too impatient, go for too much too early. That doesn't tend to be the case with Sinner. He's very measured now in the way that he plays. He still has that explosiveness to him. He's still able to hit those incredible running forehands and backhand sliding backhands, and still able to hit the ball as cleanly as he always has. But he is also able to go deep down the middle in rallies at times when he knows that he's able to just try and go into lockdown mode. And that's where, you know, we talk about the similarities between himself and Djokovic. And as I keep on saying, I see it more and more as his career and as his game progresses, Sinner. And there was actually a forehand winner that he hit off Casper Ruud, and it was to break him to go 5-1 up. And it was a serve out wide from Ruud, and Sinner he was on the stretch from his forehand, and he just maneuvers it with pure timing cross court, and he goes like a bullet cross court for a return winner. Casper can only, acknowledge it. He kind of claps his racket to say, "Yep, too good." And in that moment, just if you took a still of the way that Sinner hit that forehand return, you could definitely find Djokovic and put it next to each other, exactly the same moments in a match on the stretch, forehand return winner. And I'm telling you now, they would look very similar. Sinner he's going to become increasingly hard to be on hard courts if he continues to improve the way that he has. He's adding things to his game at all times: drop shot, lob, volleys. His serve has improved so much, his return has improved. He's always looking at ways to get better, and that to me is very, very impressive. The last thing I want to mention about in terms, because I talked about, of course, we talked about serve, we talked about the ad court exchange as well, or ad court battle. The last thing I want to mention is that Casper Ruud is just a little bit underpowered in this matchup, if I'm being honest. He has the power on the forehand, but as I mentioned, he has to constantly be the aggressor. Sinner was just able to soak it up at times, for the most part, anyways, and then turn the point around to either be the one who was dictating and on the front foot, and then really hammer home, his way of playing in those points and managed to win them, or he actually stuck with Ruud and managed to get to neutral and then force him into an error. So for me, Sinner is just maybe, well, not maybe, I think he is a level above a Casper Ruud right now, if not two. And the scoreline, I think, suggested that that is the case. So, look, I mean, Casper, he's made at least the semi-finals in all three editions he's played. He is a very, very solid player. But I think the problem he's going to have, unless it's on clay, he's going to struggle with your Sinners and your Alcarazes and your Zverevs and your Djokovic's if they're there. But on clay, he's got a chance against these guys. He does, with the forehand and more time, and the fact that he's able to generate so much topspin as well, and really rip that ball through the court. Casper just doesn't have the backhand that Sinner has, as we mentioned earlier, and that is a big, big, big. I wouldn't say it's a hole in his game, but it's definitely something that people will take advantage of. He has shored it up, but it's still not quite at the level that it needs to be if he were to say want to win a slam. That's my thoughts on it anyway. But he's always willing to improve Casper, so he'll have the off season to potentially do something on that. I think that's all I want to discuss, in honesty, and it's gone on longer than I expected, the post match analysis. But it's always interesting to dive into these matches and try to understand, why things have happened, why are they unfolded the way they have. Casper put in a really good effort, but I just think at the end of the day, Sinner is going to be a really, really tough matchup for him if they play on any surface. But it'll be interesting to see how it does play out next year if they do meet at least once, and whether Casper is able to take learnings from this match and then actually utilize them in the next match to potentially at least push Sinner more than he did in this one. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Remember to that like button, do subscribe if you're new, and do a rating or review for this single podcast platform. Appreciate each and every one of you. See you guys soon.